Alrighty. It looks like we are finally live. Hi, guys. Hi, guys. Let me just check some settings really quick. Make sure we're good. Okay. Audio looks good. Video. Hello, you guys. Happy Sunday or Monday, depending on where in the world you are. Oh, my goodness. It's good to be back. It's been a while. Hello. Hello. Yes. Good morning from San Diego. Good morning, Dark Ives. Good morning. Oh my goodness. Yay! I do apologize for last weekend. Oh my goodness. I it was a holiday weekend here in the States. We had leading up to the 4th of July. So I was out at Lake Tahoe and completely just and so many people reach out to me and like, I hope you're okay. I hope you're okay. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm so sorry, guys. So if that ever I will let you guys know. I know this has become pretty much a routine at this point. So anytime in the future, if I am unable to make it that weekend, I will make sure to let everybody know. But all is well. I am back, and I am excited to jump into Q&As. I want to give it just a moment longer to let people get notified. Come on in and join. Get yourself a drink. Get cozy. Hello, Mai. Hello, Melis from UK. Welcome, welcome, welcome. JT, hi. Chi girl, mystical. Oh my goodness. I love it. I love it. Wow, we've already got 40 people in here and we've been on for maybe 2 minutes. Excellent. Hello from India. Welcome. Welcome. My gosh, it's got to be late over there. Can I apply to one-on-one coaching to talk to you about the promise, seeking inner God, quantum jumping, and soul connections? Absolutely. Yeah, and Northwest Wind, just FYI, I'm gonna announce it here in just a second, but yeah, the waitlist to one-on-one coaching is opening this afternoon. So if you're not on the waitlist and you want to join, I would hop on that. The links are in the description box below, because it's first come first serve. So make sure to do that because I would absolutely love to talk more about the promise and deeper into the metaphysics. 100%, 100%. Hello, Missy from France, from Bulgaria. Oh my gosh, India again. Welcome, you guys. Welcome, welcome. I love it. Got people from all over the world here, from Australia. Oh my goodness. Thank you for joining. Thank you for being here. Lucy, hi. Long time no see. Hello. Oh, this is going to be good. This is going to be good. Got a lot of my favorite people here. Yay. All right. Without further ado, I know we've been waiting for a little bit, so let's go ahead and jump on in. Really quick before we do, just as I mentioned a moment ago, but for those who may have just entered, the waitlist for one-on-one coaching is open. There's a few spots available, and I'm going to be sending that out this afternoon in a few hours here. So it's not too late to join the waitlist and get that sign up form available. It is first come first serve, so it is not too late to jump on that if you would like. But that said, I've also got my masterclasses and courses and other programs. I've got all that information down in the description box. So if you're interested, all of that is there for you to go ahead and check out and sign up for. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump on in, answer some questions. First, I need some caffeine. Definitely need some caffeine. Missy, can you live in the end with your SP by visualizing kissing them every day and hugging them, or should we do only one scene and drop it? Some say they pretend that they are there every day. Would it be better to do it every day because we would feel it more as a new belief? Or is there a point we shouldn't visualize different scenes with them? What are your thoughts? Good question. So, when it comes to imagination and living in the end, should we do it every day? Should we be imagining every day, or do we just do it once and drop it? And this is a fairly common question. Essentially, yes, you want to you want to live in the end. You want to be imagining that desired outcome as much and as often as possible until you reach the point of the Sabbath, or you'll reach a point where you no longer feel the desire to continue to visualize or affirm or anything like that. Um, but that will come naturally, right? Once that seed is planted, so to speak, once that subconscious impression has been fully accepted, you're gonna essentially drop the desire to continue to visualize and all of that. But until we get to that point, yeah, we do want to spend as much time as possible without force. I gotta mention, don't try to force yourself, but just spending the day as often as possible, living in that end in your imagination and just continuing to go back there. Now, I won't say that you have to pretend like your person is there with you. Um, if that helps you to feel good, if that's enjoyable for you, then you can. But you don't have to. You don't have to like literally pretend that your person is there in the 3D with you. For some people, that can feel a bit delusional. But again, it's going to vary by person. If you enjoy doing it that way, if you enjoy imagining as if the person was there with you, then that's fine too. So basically, yes, you want to keep imagining as often as possible until you reach that point of satisfaction where you're no longer going to have the desire to visualize or do affirmations. Good question, though. Must my self concept be aligned to manifest my SP the right way? If we visualize for 2 weeks like you did, is it enough? We would catch the feeling at least once, correct? Good question. So a couple questions there. Does our self concept need to be aligned to manifest your SP the right way? Well, that would be ideal, right? That would be ideal because we're always manifesting who we are. We're manifesting what we believe is true. So whatever the self concept is, whatever your conception of self is what's going to continue to manifest. So in that vein, yeah, we would want the conception of self to be lined up with that version of us that already has their person, right? That is in a loving, committed, and long-term relationship. We certainly do not want any limiting beliefs, doubts, any fearful thoughts, insecurities, anything like that. That's not compatible with the wish fulfilled. So in that regard, yes. If we visualize for 2 weeks, is that enough? Maybe. Maybe. It's really tricky to do. It's really tricky for me to give lengths of time and how long it's gonna take, that how long you need to visualize, because everyone is gonna be different. Um, for some people, it's once and done. They visualize, they imagine one time and drop it, and that's it. Others imagine for weeks until they reach that place of the Sabbath. So, it depends. We would catch the feeling at least once. Again, maybe. If you have been living in the end, if you have been imagining, visualizing for 2 weeks, then I would imagine that you would you would catch that feeling at least once, but again, it's gonna be different for everybody, and that's why it's tricky to give people this kind of exact advice because literally everyone is gonna have a different trajectory, everyone's gonna have a different, length of time. So, but essentially just like the last question, you continue to imagine and continue to live in the end until you have that natural satisfaction and the natural sense that you don't need to keep doing that. And you'll naturally drop it. Good morning. What would be an ideal daily routine? I am more focused on my self-concept, but I am affirming for other desires as well. Can you give a solid plan? Um, Good question. Yeah, and I did make a video talking about my daily routine and sort of what I do in the day-to-day basis, how I go about utilizing my imagination. If you haven't seen that video yet, I would check that out. Um, it's a fairly recent video. I made that, maybe a couple months ago, but I'm more focused on my self-concept. So as far as an ideal daily routine, again, this is going to be different for everybody. I would take a moment to really just play with different techniques. I would experiment when we're new to this, when we're getting the hang of this practice and these teachings. We want to experiment and play around to see what resonates the most with us. Because it really depends. Like, are you more of a morning person? Are you more of a night owl? Do you enjoy visualizing? Do you enjoy affirmations? So it's really, again, it's really tricky to say. Um, Doing the one size fit all approach for myself personally and the people that I've coached, it's just not an effective way to go about it. But I would experiment, I would play around with different techniques in different times of the day and utilize whatever works best for you. The only thing that I will say across the board is make sure to take advantage of those windows before bed and when we're waking up in the morning to the best of your ability. Those windows between sleep and consciousness are incredibly powerful windows as far as subconscious impressions and accepting that desire subconsciously. So, but yeah, I would play around with different techniques at different times of the day and see what works best for you. Welcome back. Thank you. It's good to be back. I've also got a new video coming out shortly after this live, by the way. So coming back all at once. For testing the law, I have a list of small things. I haven't thought about them too much, but if they aren't here yet after a month, should I change the list? Any encouragement slash tips? Absolutely. So this is actually a common, more common than I realized thing that people go through. So when we're new to the law of assumption, people are told a lot to test the law to build your faith, right? Which is excellent advice. But when it comes to the list method, and this is important, when it comes to the list method, we have to be able to set it and forget it, like drop it. Because if we're continuing to look for those things, if we're continuing to notice, oh, it's not here yet. Why is it not here yet? That's not that's only bringing into awareness that, well, I don't have it, I don't see it, it's not working, right? It truly does, because it will show up when you're not looking for it and you're not expecting it, basically, um, which can be challenging to do. Because even though there's small things that we're not attached to, the things itself, there is likely a lot more attachment to the idea of manifestation and really, really wanting this to be true, really hoping this to be true. So we end up putting a lot of attachment and emphasis on that. So we want to be really, really careful about that. If we're looking or we're constantly like we're going to, oh, it's not here yet, that's only gonna add time to the time delay, basically. So I would say set it, drop it, forget it. And if that feels really challenging to do, another way that you can begin to build your faith in the law is to become more and more aware and observant of the natural thoughts and feelings and reactions that you have in contrast with the 3D and what happens around you. Because what you're inevitably going to see is that we're manifesting all the time, right? You may have a random thought about something, and then a day or two later, you see something that's in relation to that thought. Somebody may act or do something based on what you had assumed about earlier that day. But we're constantly doing it. So if we become more and more aware of it, that's going to continue to build your faith as well. So self-observation. Self-observation. Note your thoughts, note your reactions, note how you feel, and also be noting what's happening in the 3D around you, because you're gonna see inevitably that they're one and the same. So I hope that helps. Oh, I hope you had a great time. Oh, thank you, Robke. Thank you. I did. I did. I had a wonderful time. You guys are so sweet. Oh, trying to find my spot. One sec, guys. Oh, I've missed you all so much. Y'all are too sweet. Everyone pay it back to Missy by clicking that like button. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you. Yeah, if you guys enjoy the stream, definitely hit the like button. I'm getting coached from Missy and I highly recommend. Jennifer, you were so sweet. Thank you. Y'all are too kind. All right. Sorry, I'm trying to get to the questions, but oh, you guys. Shout out to all of you. Hi, Missy. I'm manifesting love, and when I imagine it, I imagine a guy with a specific face who doesn't exist. Will this guy I've created manifest, or will somebody similar come instead? Is it possible? Absolutely, anything is possible. Anything is possible. So if you are imagining somebody and face and all, but you haven't met this person, you don't know this person, is that possible to manifest? Absolutely. Absolutely. And in fact, one of the things that I encourage people to do if you're trying to manifest a new partner is to get clear on not just the personality traits and characteristics and those things, but if there's any physical attributes that you find attractive, then absolutely imagine that too. Absolutely imagine that too. So yeah, it's totally possible. I have another question. Why do we have those strong desires? Good one. Why do we have strong desires? Because they're experiences that we're meant to have. So when we have a desire for something, that is a gift from God. That is coming from awareness. That is something that says you are meant to have this kind of experience. And that goes back to the whole reason as to why we're even here in the first place. Like we're all of us are just we're awareness in different masks and in different, in this temporary human form, having experiences to continue to grow and evolve and, you know, essentially keep evolving until one day we do awaken again as God. So when we have a desire for something, it is something that we are meant to experience that is meant for the growth and evolution that we're supposed to be having on this journey as this human self, basically. I hope that makes sense. I do need to talk more about the the two selves, right? The I am and the ego. I and my father are one, but the father is greater than I. I definitely need to talk more about that because I think it is going to be really helpful for a lot of people. But yeah, as far as why we have desires, that's because we're meant to have that experience. I've waited since last week since I discovered your channel for the Oh, it's good to have you here, Alice. Hi, Missy. Hugs from Miami. I would like to know more about the concept of everyone is you pushed out and other people's free will. Absolutely. And I have made a couple videos touching on everyone is you pushed out and free will and all of that. If you haven't watched them, I would definitely recommend doing so. I know that a couple of them are in the Manifestation Fundamentals playlist, but I mean, speci- uh, basically, everyone is you pushed out is just that everyone in your world is going to show up exactly how we assume, believe, think that they're going to show up. basically. Everybody is a reflection of that concept of self, right? Whatever we perceive as true is what is going to be our experience, and that includes other people. So, depending on the beliefs and assumptions, is it's that's the version of the person that we're going to encounter. And as far as free will, um, the only one that has free will in your reality, in your experience, the only one with free will is you. Um, and even that people debate online because we're very much driven and moved by the beliefs and assumptions that we have, right? So it can feel very difficult for us to move out of an old state or an old story because we're so primed and ingrained to operate from this old state of consciousness. But ultimately, the only one with free will in your reality is you. And that doesn't mean that what we're doing here is trying to manipulate people or coerce people. That's not at all, because we're not doing anything to the 3D. This has nothing to do with trying to change the 3D. This is all about the change from within. This is the change of self. And with that change of self, things are going to reflect differently in the 3D. You're going to see a completely different version of that person once you change your beliefs and assumptions. So I know it's a lot. It's kind of a wild concept, but definitely check out the videos that I've made talking more about that. Mhm. Welcome, Nicole. I'm glad you could make it. Hi, Missy. If everyone is you pushed out, when someone you just met is disrespecting you, does that mean you don't respect yourself? That's a really good question, Pixie Doll. Um, I mean, it very well could be. But so when it comes to everyone is you pushed out, it's not all just your beliefs about yourself, but what are the beliefs that you have about other people? Right? I mean, they very much do go hand in hand, but do we have assumptions about other people? Do we have, any biases? Do we have anything like that? Right? The conception of self includes your beliefs and assumptions about you, other people, and just the world around you at large. So, general assumptions about how the world works. So, if somebody if somebody shows up and you just met them and they're acting rude and disrespectful, I mean, it is an opportunity for us to, do some reflection, right? Because everything in the 3D is all feedback. It's all feedback telling you the state of consciousness you may be occupying. So, yeah, it's just a chance to see if there's anything going on, like if anything is hanging out between underneath the conscious surface. But either way, I would revise it. I would revise it. I mean, we don't need to, you know, get too carried away into detective mode as why is this person showing up like this? Revise it ultimately, right? Hi, Missy. Do you suggest frequently checking the 3D to see if I have revised successfully when I'm revising a physical evidence to disappear? Thank you. Do I recommend checking the 3D constantly if we're trying to revise something to change with our physical appearance? No. No. I know it's super tempting to check the 3D all the time, especially when revising something like a uh, physical change. But mm-mm. No, and I know it can be challenging to not. And obviously, there's going to be times in the day where we say our reflection, and that's fine. But intentionally going and checking the 3D is going to reinforce the I don't have it. Nothing's changed. Nothing's here yet. Why is it not here yet? Which is only going to continue to keep you in a state of that old story and that old self. So, as much as it's tempting to go and check the 3D, don't do it. Don't do it. Hi, Missy. Recently, I've experienced something strange. I had great sats and meditations. My visualization felt so real, but the 3D felt worse than ever afterwards. Have you ever had a similar experience? Yes, yes. Check out my video about ego backlash. That sounds like textbook ego backlash. And in short, that's where once it typically comes on after we've had a considerable breakthrough. We've had a really good streak, like, we've been feeling really good. We may have had an incredible sat session, um, you know, doing really good, and then seemingly out of nowhere, it's like everything just goes to shit in the 3D. Yeah, that's the old man throwing a fit, basically. But, check out the video that I made about that. I think it's called "Why We Struggle to Manifest." Um, but yeah, it's not uncommon. It's incredibly common. Um, some people call it purging. It's not really purging. It's just the old man fighting back because the ego, its number one job is self-preservation, right? It wants the status quo. It wants what feels normal and natural and familiar to us. So anytime we try to introduce change or something that is feels like change, that's a threat to the ego. Yeah, check out the video that I made about that. Not uncommon. What if I don't see movement at all? Keep having faith. Good question. In that case, as again, as challenging as it is, because we are so, so conditioned to look to the 3D and checking the 3D. We live in a 3D experience, but no, this is the practice of going within. So the gauge that you're looking is internal, right? It's the internal gauge. What we want to be keeping note of is how we're feeling, how we're like the thoughts that are naturally coming up for us, how we're reacting. That is going to be way better gauge of movement versus anything that's happening in the 3D. Because it may look like there is absolutely nothing happening out there, when in fact a lot of things are happening, right? We're not gonna know that we're on the bridge of incidents until we're on the other side of it. Like, it's gonna be in hindsight that we're like, "Oh, that was a bridge," right? But while we're on it or right before it, it's not gonna look like anything in the 3D. So, yeah, the 3D is a terrible gauge as far as if it's working or not. All the 3D is telling you is the states of consciousness that you perhaps are occupying or have been occupying. So, yeah, move within. Move within. If you're checking to see if you're doing it right, if you're looking for movement, note how you're feeling and thinking internally. 100%. If we have a desire that keeps nagging us, but circumstances seem impossible, why does this desire persist and drive us nuts, given we're apparently unable to manifest it and just annoys us? I've felt that way before, John. Yeah. Um, well, again, if we have a desire for something, especially those desires that seem to just get more and more annoying, like those desires that are really pressing and they don't let up, it is an experience that we are meant to have, right? Whether or not the circumstances seem impossible, I mean, even if it looks impossible, it doesn't mean it is. Nothing's impossible. Um, but understandably, it can get really, really stupid and annoying when it seems like nothing's working and it looks impossible, but we just can't help but want this thing still or have this desire. Yeah, yeah. But again, a desire is an experience that we're meant to have. That we decided as awareness, we decided that these are the things that we're going to experience in this temporary human form. So yeah. Is it possible to change physical appearance? Yes. Yes, it is. I think I finally understand visualizing in SATs. It's not falling asleep while looping the scene that's important. It's falling asleep in the positive feeling the scene gives you, correct? Yes. Yes. Ding, 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 ding. Yeah, we don't need to literally fall asleep in the middle of the visual scene. Um, I mean, we can, but more importantly is the feeling. More importantly is the feeling, 100%, 100%. One second. Do you meditate sitting or laying down? Uh, do you mean me personally or just in general? You can meditate either way, whatever's more comfortable for you. Now, you may be more prone to falling asleep if you meditate laying down, um, but you can. Yeah. Unless it's so I meditate in the mornings after waking up and in the evenings before bed, and in those periods, I'm laying down, but if I'm doing meditation during the day, I'm doing it sitting up. But it is whatever works best for you. Thank you for the super chat, Jay Green. I'm working on your SP master course. I have trouble keeping focus with meditations in general. Is that a problem? I want any tips. Thank you. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, is it a problem? No. No, I mean, I'd say it can be fairly common, especially if our mind is prone to wandering a lot. If that is the case, if that's something that you struggle with, one thing that I absolutely recommend is something like a focused attention meditation. And that essentially that is just, when we when we relax and we go into meditation, we pick something to keep our focus on. For example, the physical sensation of the breath, and just keep your attention on that one thing. And when your mind inevitably wanders, you just bring it back, and you practice just redirecting and bringing it back. And that meditation, I was diagnosed with ADHD as a kid. My mind was in 20 different places at once. It was like having a browser with 50 tabs open. But that meditation helped tremendously. So, yeah, absolutely, I would recommend. I'm a new fan. Excellent consciousness work that you're doing. Thank you, EPK. Thank you. Happy to have you here. Uh-huh. Sorry, trying to find my spot again. When I revise, I am so immersed that I end up wanting to physically experience the situations and people that are in my revisions. Has this sensation happened to you or anyone else in the chat? When I revise, I am so immersed that I end up wanting to physically. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I've 100% had moments like that where you become so immersed that you're no longer aware of the 3D or in your 3D body. 100%. 100%. Yeah. That I'm a little bit confused by you end up wanting to physically experience the situations. Um, because when I got to the point of complete immersion, like when I got to the point where my visualizations became very vivid and visceral, uh, it felt like I had the physical, like it any sort of desire to experience that thing in the physical kind of went away. It just felt like a memory. It felt like a memory of something that had happened, and which is effectively what it became, right? Because in the revision, it felt so real that coming out of it, it felt like this was something that really happened. I hope that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. Maybe somebody in the chat has had similar experiences to what you're describing. I did your test recommendation of 5 things. All happened within the first week except one. Although one was a long shot, I didn't think would happen, and it did. Awesome. Awesome. That's amazing, Anne. Yeah, we want to continue to build our faith. We want to continue no matter what you're trying to manifest, we always wanna be continuing to prove to ourselves and show ourselves that we are, in fact, the operant power. Like, this is a must, right? If we know and understand and trust ourselves as the operant power, that is going to help us considerably with anything that we're trying to manifest, right? It's gonna help you to get to that place of detachment, of that old state. Because if you see yourself and know yourself as the operant power, you're not gonna be attached anymore to that state, right? That old state and that old story and the old fears and all that comes with it. You're not gonna resonate with that anymore because you're not that state. That's not who you are. You are God, you are awareness experiencing different states of consciousness, and you can easily move into one as another. So, yeah, continue to build your faith. Continue to prove to yourself that you are, in fact, the operant power. Hey, I'm in love with your videos. Thank you. How can I manifest my ex back in committed and loving relationship when he said that he doesn't feel for me anymore and just wants to be friends? The how messes with me. Yeah, the how is yeah. And I know that part of this is getting used to something that feels very, very foreign to us. And that is regardless of the circumstances, go to the end. The circumstances truly don't matter. It doesn't matter what was said. It doesn't matter what, like, none of that matters. None of that matters. So, how to manifest your ex back in a committed and loving relationship? Continue to go there in imagination. Continue to go there, and not for the express purpose of trying to change the 3D, because that's where we hit resistance. That's where we hit like, oh God, how's it going to happen? But he said this, but this happened, and like that's where we get caught up in the web of how. Just go to that place in your imagination because it feels good. It feels enjoyable. And there's nothing stopping you from being able to go to that place in your imagination and give yourself that experience in your imagination. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, don't take the factors as to what happened and what was said. My husband said that he never wanted to talk to me again. Like he was done with me. If you haven't seen my video, my SP story, go check it out. Because yeah, if I took that at face value, we wouldn't be married. So uh, disregard all of that and continue to go to the end. I got a great opportunity at the university, but I haven't affirmed for it at all. In fact, I had quite a few negative thoughts during the week. How can we explain this? It Does it mean that I'm in the right state? Yeah. So you had a great first off, congrats. Congrats for the getting the opportunity at the university. Um, but how do we explain when good things happened, even if we haven't affirmed for it? And in fact, we had a couple of negative thoughts about it. Well, I mean, that's simple because really it's the dominant state that we're in that manifest. So perhaps you don't have a whole lot of resistance to the idea of getting a promotion or getting that opportunity, maybe in general. I don't know. But yeah, and the affirmations are not what manifests, right? So we manifest all the time without using affirmations. We always have, we always will. So it doesn't matter whether or not we affirm for something, it's the feeling behind it. That's what manifests the state. That's how we select the state. It's the feeling behind the affirmations or the visualization, right? So, um, and yeah, even despite a few negative thoughts, like a few negative thoughts is not going to blow everything up. It's not. In fact, I'm coming out with a video talking more about how to get rid of intrusive thoughts because there's a deep fear in this community of even one negative thought. Like we tend to panic and fixate if we have so much as one or two negative thoughts. Like it's just ruined everything, and that no. No. Um, but yeah, it does mean that I mean, clearly you are in the right state for that opportunity to show up for you. Um, and yeah, despite the fact if you haven't affirmed for it and even a couple negative thoughts came up, that's not enough to deter a manifestation from coming in. Where am I? Where am I? Wow, that question answered my question. I love it when that happens. How do you change your assumptions slash views on people when your mind insists on going back to what it knows? It's a battle every day. I don't have any kind of grasp, apparently. Um, yeah, no, I know that that's a challenge that virtually all of us face. How do we change our assumptions when your mind insists on going back to what it knows? I mean, y- that's why we talk about persistence, right? Persisting to go back to that state of the wish fulfilled despite reverting back, right? Because we all have a dominant state of consciousness that we dwell in, right? Everybody has the dominant state made up of the beliefs, assumptions, um, you know, perspectives, expectations that we have. And that's sort of the home base. So we may move out of that state from time to time, but we generally speaking will always wind up reverting back to what feels most normal and natural to us, and hence where the persistence part of this comes in. We want to continue to go to that new state in imagination. We want to continue to go to that place where we are now the person that we want to be with the new beliefs and the new assumptions until that becomes the new home base, right? So frequent occupation of that new state, you're going to be more and more like you're naturalizing it for yourself, you're normalizing it for yourself, and thus you're not going to be moving back to that old state all the time. Yeah. You will inevitably reach a place where you're no longer going to identify with that old self. That will if we persist in going into that new state and imagination, there will come a time where you're not going to go back to that old self. Yeah. I know I know it's not always easy. Da, da, da. How do I manifest for something not to happen? How do you manifest something not showing up? I mean, I would go to the end, like, what would happen if this thing didn't happen? Like, what would that look like if this outcome didn't happen? Perhaps if this terrible thing didn't happen, then what would be something that implied that? And I know that may sound a bit weird, but yeah, yeah. And this is where we get to get creative. Like, this is truly where we get to get creative because there's no limits to where we can go and what we can do in imagination. So if perhaps you're fearful of something bad happening, um, what would be something that implies that that thing didn't happen, right? Yeah, and I don't know to what context you're referring to as like, what area of life you're referring to. I would give you probably a better example, but yeah. Yeah, we can literally we can conjure anything in imagination. Anything, anything. Hi, Missy. Your shorts have been a real blessing in my life this Oh, thank you. Keep up the good work. Oh, thank you, Stanley. Thank you. Missy, how do you cope with setbacks that leave you feeling frustrated or upset? Good question. Good question, Mabel. Because I mean that again, part of the human experience, right? Uh, I guess the key and one of the best things that we can learn on this journey, one of the objectives, no matter what we're trying to do or what we're trying to manifest, is getting to a point where we're not so attached to any given state. And we see states for what they are. They're just states of consciousness. Um, and who you are, who you really are, is that awareness, is that I am, is so much bigger than any one state, any circumstance. Ultimately, does not matter, right? It's very much stemming from the ego when we get attached to the circumstances around us, the state around us, right? We latch onto something and says, "Oh, this is bad. Oh, this is good." As awareness, they're all just states of consciousness. So when we can get to a place where we're more objective about whatever state we're in, right? It's easier to separate yourself, to sort of untether yourself from any situation, any circumstance that come up for you. You essentially get to a place where you're not as yeah, you're not as latched on to, "Oh, this is bad. This sucks. Why did this happen? Woe is me." Because there's no need for that. Like, we're creating all the time, and if we manifest a terrible state, we can undo it. We can change it. We can select a new one, right? And that's not to say that, again, it's not to dismiss when terrible things happen, when bad things happen, not at all. But with this practice comes the ability to become more objective when it comes to states. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Fred. Love you, Missy. What can I do when SP is not fully the version I've been manifesting? Have some big movement, but it's still not the version that I want. Commitment, move in to act together, etc. So what can you do when SP is not fully the version that you've been manifesting? If they're not showing up the way that you desire to see them in the 3D, I take it, keep going. Keep imagining. Keep going there in your imagination. If the 3D is not showing up the way that you want it to, if it's not conforming in the way that you want it to, keep going there in imagination. Like, don't accept the 3D as final. Don't accept that, okay, yeah, this sucks. They're not showing up and it is what it is. No. No. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Thank you for the super chat. Your videos and live chats have been such a huge help for me over the last several months. Grateful for you and oh, thank you, Ty. Oh my goodness, thank you. You are so sweet. I'm glad. I am so glad. I'm so glad. And let me know if you have a question. I didn't see a question there. But if you have one, I'm certainly happy to answer. Also, is it better to revise before the breakup 5 months ago when things started to fall apart, or is it better to revise a recent conversation when SP tells he is not ready? Good question. And this brings up a point that I wanted to mention. When it comes to revision, I know a lot of people can feel very overwhelmed, right? Because where do we even start? Like, if there were so many things, it can be super overwhelming, and we don't even know where to begin with it. So if that ever feels like the case, start with the last 24 hours. Start with if there was a conversation that was had that was not ideal and you wanted it to be different, revise it, right? Basically, start with revising the day and anything that happened in the day. And as you get more and more into a pattern, as you get more and more, I guess, used to revising on a regular basis, you're going to be much more able to also go back into the long-term things, right? Yeah. So I mean, effectively, depending on how much if the breakup still feels like it's really impacting you and affecting you, absolutely recommend revising that. But if you're confused as to where to start, like just to get yourself into the habit and start building up that momentum, revise what happened in the last 24 hours. Yeah. Is it possible that the only thing that may work against my manifestation is guilt for what I did and said? I just need to forgive myself first to feel worthy of my manifestation. Yes. Yes, that's important. That's important. And guys, this is why I talk so much about revision. Revision is forgiveness. It is truly getting to that point of forgiveness, and it is the absolute first course of action, first thing that we want to do. Um, because if there's still guilt, if you are still harboring guilt for what happened and what was said, then that is going to play a huge role in the state of consciousness that you're selecting, whether you're conscious of it or not, right? Yeah. Guilt begets more guilt, basically. So I would absolutely practice revision and practice forgiving yourself. 100%. 100%. If the Father is greater than I, is creating things out of my conscious awareness, like wars, then is there a scope of what we can create for ourselves? How is it deciding what to create? Good question, JT. Um, you're talking about awareness, right? If 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 God, if awareness or I am is creating things outside of your conscious awareness, then is there a scope of what we create? So is there a limit? Is that what you mean? A limit of what we can create for ourselves? No, no. And just to be clear, once in this human role, you have complete free will. Um, you have complete free will. Like God will give us desires and things that we are meant to experience, but we have the free will to, reject it or come back to it later or anything like that, right? Yeah, God will never take our free will away from us. So, um, yeah, I hope that answered the question. So no, there isn't a limit as to what we can create or uncreate or change. And I am coming out with a video to talk more about this concept. I did, if you haven't watched my videos about I am, I would definitely start with those 2, but I am coming out with a video talking more about the idea of the 2 selves, because this is important to understand, and not enough people are talking about it, so be on the lookout for that video. I'm hoping to have it up next week. Um, because yeah, there is no scope. Essentially, we decide before we're born, what we want to experience, but while we're here having this experience, God doesn't interject. We have complete free will. Dear Missy, thank you so much for all your precious advice. Oh, thank you. You're welcome. I'm not good with sats. Is it a good alternative to watch a picture where I'm together with my SP and romantic music in the background? I mean, yeah, absolutely. Are you referring to looking at a picture while listening to a song? Um, and if that helps you to capture the feeling of the wish fulfilled, if that helps you to feel good and feel into it, then absolutely, absolutely that works. Yeah, Sats is, absolutely a practice. There's a little bit of a learning curve to Sats. I made a short kind of poking fun at that because, yeah, Yeah, we're not used to doing anything quite like it, so it does take a little bit of practice, but, if you want to find an alternative, as long as it helps you to resonate with the feeling of the wish fulfilled, then I would do it. I understand the concept of everyone is she pushed out and what it's about. I'm just having trouble getting the free will of the other people part. So in your reality, in your experience, other people, um, there's infinite versions of everyone. There's infinite versions of everything because creation is already finished. Every possible outcome, every scenario is already complete. Like there's no linear timeline. It's all just existing right now. So whatever the beliefs and assumptions, whatever the conception of self is, determines the state that we move into. And from that state, it's going to be whatever version of that person that lines up with that, right? So because everything comes from that state, what version of that person and how they show up for us, the thoughts that we have, the thoughts that what they say to us, what they all of that, all of that comes from the state of consciousness, and what determines the state of consciousness is our own beliefs and assumptions, right? Our concept of self, and that's why everybody in this community goes on and on about changing your self concept because that is going to change the state. It's going to make it so we select different states of consciousness where a different version of that person is going to show up for us. Right, so we're not manipulating anybody, we're not trying to cast a magic spell on them to get them to change, right? It's a whole new reality entirely. I hope that makes more sense. Thank you for the super chat. I realized with my self-concept work, the only thought that gives me block is my body is not perfect enough for him. Do you have any affirmations for that? Abs y Absolutely. So, with affirmations, I mean, my only advice, and again, this is just what has worked best for me and for the people that I've worked with, people that I've talked to, but we want to find and use affirmations that resonate, that helped us to feel good, that help us to jump behind the idea, right? Like, get us into that feeling of, "Yeah, yeah, this feels good, this feels right. I can get with this," right? Um I mean, I have manifested things with, like, robotic or mindless affirmations alone, but it was not sustainable. Um, Again, that's just me. Uh, yeah, and just because we can manifest something doesn't mean that it's gonna stick around, and the whole idea is having our desires stick around. So I would use affirmations that resonate. I would explore with what feels good and what feels right to you, right? Um Yeah. And I guess the first thing to tackle is the fact that the idea that, "Oh, my body is not perfect enough for him." Well, that's a complete and total belief. Like, that there's no proof, there's no fact behind any of that, right? So, yeah. I guess an example would be I love how it feels when he tells me how beautiful I am, right? I love how it feels when he tells me how attracted he is to me and how much, he loves every part of me, something like that. But again, what resonates for me may not resonate so much for you, but I would just kind of explore in general what that would look like and hearing him say things to you that would confirm that he is in fact attracted to you, if that makes sense. Oh my goodness, thank you, Empress. I just saw your super chat. Thank you. And Lisa, thank you. You guys are so sweet. Thank you, thank you. How can I manifest my mom being successful as an artist? I want to help her with her gallery and support her business. Absolutely. I mean, the first thing that we want to get clear on is what does success look like for you? Like in your mind, what would imply that she is a successful artist? Would that be winning a bunch of awards? Would that be getting a lot of commissions? Having your art featured in big name galleries, right? Um, because yeah, success is very much subjective. So first get clear on what that looks like for you. And then I would take whatever that looks like or whatever that is and use that to construct a scene, use that to construct whether that is, going to a popular gallery for an unveiling or, hearing her tell you excitedly that she got a huge commission for this art piece or something like that. But first define what success is and what that looks like and what would imply that she is in fact having success with her art business. Also, that is so sweet, by the way. I love that. That is so incredibly sweet. Okay, let me see. Old man throwing a fit, that's hilarious, but not funny, sorry. Well, and obviously when I say old man, I mean the old story, the old self, that old ego. Why is the 3D, and with that our consciousness, so much more real and tangible than the process of creation in the unconscious? Good question. So why is the 3D more real than our imagination? Is that the question? I think that's the question, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I might be off on that. But, I mean, the reason that the 3D appears more real is because we haven't been using our imagination. Not we have not been using our creative imagination. Like, for example, when we were younger, right? And when we would imagine, it was a lot stronger, it was a lot more vivid. Um, as we got older, we were taught to be more realistic, stop take your head out of the clouds, stop imagining so much things. Your imagination is just a fairy tale. It's not real. So we've been conditioned to think that, yeah, the imagination's fake. And with that, we stop using it, right? And I say all the time, the imagination truly is like a muscle, right? And if we don't exercise it and we don't work it out, it's going to weaken. And Neville even talked about that too. He said your imagination is keyed low, which basically means that it's not very strong, like, certainly not to the ability that we can imagine, like, because with practice, you can absolutely, and I I mean absolutely, get to a place where your imagination feels just as solidly real as the 3D. Like, when I go into sats, when I go into a scene, it feels like the room that I'm sitting in right now. It is just as visceral and vivid. Now, that's not to say that it has to be like that in order to manifest. I need to be clear. So I know sometimes people panic when they hear that, like, "Oh god, but I can't visualize." Doesn't matter. The point I'm making is that the imagination can absolutely be as strong as the 3D because they're one and the same. But that's a whole 'nother topic for another time. But, yeah, it through strengthening and practicing and exercising the imagination, you can get to the same place where you imagine something and it feels like something that really happened. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Chi girl. Thank you for the super chat. Sending this for a cup of coffee. Yay, caffeine. Thank you for your videos and live chats. I've had so many aha moments with them. Thank you. Good. I'm glad. I'm glad. I'm glad. I'm glad. Thank you. I love having these. I love doing these. Y'all are the best. I have been recently diagnosed with ADHD. Can you tell me what practices you do to deal with it? Absolutely. Well, like I mentioned earlier, and I don't know if you were here, when I talked earlier about somebody who was having difficulty, concentrating in meditation. Um, the best practice that I had, at least to start getting control of the focus, and like the focused attention meditation, basically. And yeah, basically we pick a focal point. We pick a point to keep our attention on, and we just continue to bring ourselves back to that. So when our mind wanders, which it inevitably will, we bring it back and we practice bringing it back and we practice bringing it back. I know it sounds a little bit, it may sound kind of repetitive, I guess, and it is, but that's kind of the point. Just to help us be able to redirect and keep the attention somewhere that we want to keep the attention on, because that is also a huge thing that's going to help us. Because before coming into this, our mind just kind of did whatever it wanted. Our mind is this wild animal, right? And why they refer to it in Buddhism as the monkey mind, because it just kind of jumps and leaps and goes wherever it wants to go. But you can absolutely start to practice reeling that in. Yeah. Thank you for your help. Trying to fully get away from bad choices, trauma, and insecurity. Oh, yeah, absolutely, K-Ball. Absolutely. I'm happy to help. I'm happy to help. Yeah. And you will get to a point where you're detached from those all of those old states of consciousness that you no longer wish to occupy and identify with. You will separate yourself from all of it. You will. Sometimes I can manifest my desires really fast, but then the manifestation disappears. Can you tell me why that happens and what I can do to fix it? Absolutely. So, and this is why my emphasis and what I teach much more along the lines of emphasis on maintaining the manifestation and how to maintain that state of the wish fulfilled, because it's one thing to make something change in the 3D or make something appear in the 3D, and it's another thing entirely to keep it around, right? um yeah, essentially, going back to, we all have that dominant state of consciousness, right, based on the beliefs and assumptions, all of that. It basically, we have that home base that we've been super familiar with this whole time. And we can move out of that state temporarily. We can move into another state, but inevitably, we're going to be reverting back to our old ways of thinking, being, and doing. Which is where the persistence part of this practice comes in. Continue to go to that new place in your imagination until it becomes the new home base, until it becomes the new dominant state of consciousness, right? So that way we're not manifesting something just to see it go away again, right? Um, yeah, I hope that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. This is all a practice of getting familiar with the whole new state of consciousness, and keep going back there until you naturally will want to stay there, and that will happen. Where's my spot? Hello, Missy, new subscriber. I'm still confused about the whole not trying to pretend as if we have our desires physically, but just feel as if we have it right now. Would love more clarification. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, what the aim of what we're trying to get to here is understanding that we, as like, the idea of I that we think we are is the ego, right? This sense of self that we've always identified with, that's just the ego. They're just an illusion, right? Who we really are is awareness. We are that I am. And how we continue to select states, new states of consciousness is through imagination, right? The imagination is the door to literally anything that we can experience. Because if you can imagine it, you're pointing to a reality that really exists. So the idea that we need to try to tell ourselves that something is a certain way in the 3D when it's not, that's not necessary. Like we don't have to literally pretend like, oh yeah, there's a pink elephant in this room with me right now. I mean, in my imagination, maybe there is, but I know the difference between the 3D and what's in my imagination. So it's not like we have to literally fake it till we make it or act as if. Um, like I'm not recommending people go out and spend a bunch of money that you perhaps don't have because you're trying to manifest having a bunch of money and being wealthy. It's about knowing and understanding that what we imagine and what we continue to imagine is what inevitably becomes expressed, right? That's what becomes the 3D experience. Not that we have to try to fake it right now. And because and let me be clear, if that works better for you, if that helps you to better capture the feeling of the wish fulfilled, then by all means. But for a lot of people, that's going to feel straight up delusional. Because your eyeballs and your senses are gonna your physical senses are gonna say, yeah, that's not true. None of that's true. So no, it's not about pretending something is in the 3D when it's not. It's about knowing and understanding that whatever we continue to imagine, that's the selection process. That's how we select what we're going to experience. So yeah, I hope that makes a little bit more sense. What's the point of revision if the past and the 3D doesn't matter and we only need to focus on the present moment? Well, and yes, we do want to keep ourselves as much like in the present moment. Well, it's more understanding that the present moment is all there is, right? The past and future only exist in our imagination. But to us, we're constantly going back into our past and reliving things from our past, whether we're conscious of it or not. We do this all the time. That's the most human thing in the world to do. So if we're continuing to bring up a past event that was not ideal and one that was really hurtful for us, perhaps like a breakup or an old fight that we had, that's going to continue to leave a subconscious impression, right? Like, because it doesn't stay in the past, it's an imaginal act. Our memories are imaginal acts, and especially memories that invoke a strong reaction from us. So yes, all the idea is the 3D doesn't matter, but to most people, it very much can't help the fact that they go into the past a lot, or the future. So if there's something from the past that feels like consistently coming up for you and it's what you don't want, we want to revise it. We want to change that imaginal act because that memory is just an imaginal act. Oh, I hope that makes a little bit more sense. I'm manifesting love and I really like this boy, but I can't shake this feeling that what if there's someone better? And I always see angel numbers. Good sign. Well, if the so and I don't think it's uncommon to have, you know, feelings like that surface from time to time of like, oh, but what if someone else is out there? But if you really like somebody, if the overall consensus is that you really do like this person, then you know, I would imagine for that. But ultimately, it's up to you. I would first get very clear though on what it is that you desire. Get very, very clear first on what exactly you desire. Missy, I followed your revision advice and revised a bad day I had a few days ago, where I threw something out of the window of my car. After the revision, that object I threw out appeared in my car. Yup. That's amazing. So you revised a day where you threw something out of the window of your car, presumably upset, and then you went to check and that object was back in your car? Yep, glitch in the matrix. I love it. I love it. Since it's recommended to do revision every day, should we do a revision scene first and then a manifestation scene right after every night? Um, so should we do a revision scene first and then you mean a scene for the future, perhaps? Um, yeah, and yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no real set order as to what you need to imagine in. Um, if you want to revise something first and then go into a desired act that you would like to experience, something in the future, absolutely, absolutely, that's fine. Uh, yes, and I'm still catching up on emails from being out of town, so hang tight. Also, I'm curious about something. Have you ever seen the movie Ruby Sparks? No, I have not. I will definitely look that up. Curious. Ruby Sparks. SB texted me this morning at 2:48 a.m. How are you? Just keep knowing it's done. Other thoughts slash reminders. Simone, that's awesome. So SB reached out to you? Yes, yes. Continue to know it's done. Keep going back there. Yes, 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 yes. It's easy to like, once we start to see some kind of movement, it's easy to turn all of our attention back to the 3D. Keep imagining, keep going within. That is awesome. If you're manifesting a SP and someone asks if you're single and you answer yes, is that considered not living in the end? How do you handle conversations like that in the 3D? Good question. Um, I wouldn't consider that not living in the end. Because we don't and it's entirely up to you what you wanna do in that circumstance. If somebody asked you if you're single, um, and you want to answer no because that is your intention, you have that intention set on being with your person, that is your right to do. We don't have to do that, we don't have to lie. It really is on what you feel best doing, what resonates most with you. But we're understanding that just because something is a certain way in the 3D at this very moment, presently, does not mean that we're somewhere else completely different in imagination, right? In our imagination, we're already in that perfect relationship with our person, right? But again, there's that separation. So it doesn't need to be that um, it doesn't mean that, like, if you tell somebody in the 3D, "Yes, I am single," because here in the 3D at this moment, perhaps that is truth, and what that person can perceive with their senses and what you can perceive with your senses is that in this 3D moment, I'm single, but I know that what I imagine becomes my 3D reality. I know that's how I continue to select new states of consciousness, so ultimately, that's like, as long as you're doing that, as long as you're continuing to live in imagination in that state, that's living in the end. That's living in the end. But again, it's as much as far as what to say in the 3D as much or as little as you're comfortable saying. And I tell that to everyone. If it's a conversation that feels upsetting or triggering or you don't wanna go there, you can say just that. Like, I don't wanna I don't wanna talk about it." I have trouble with consistency, practicing manifestation on a consistent basis. Um, where did you go? Damn it, the chat just bounced. I have trouble with consistency, practicing manifestation on a consistent basis. How do you develop a habit of intentional manifestation? Good question. And yeah, we're creatures of habit. So habits can be challenging to break or introduce new ones. What helped me was setting reminders on my phone. Just setting alarms to go off throughout the day so that I could check in with myself and sort of so that way if I got too wrapped up in the 3D or I was like letting my mind get too far away from, my imaginal act, it would kind of bring me back to, so to speak. But the key to that is that we need to switch up the reminders from time to time. Otherwise, we're just going to wind up shutting them off. We're going to wind up like overlooking or ignoring them. So, like every couple of days, set reminders at different times of the day, right? Like kind of switch it up a little bit. And that's going to force you to get into the habit of keenly observing what state you're occupying. And you're going to naturally want to move and you're going to start practicing moving states in consciousness, right? No, just my 2 cents. The universe is very, very giving. Indeed. You explain manifesting so well. Your videos have been helping me a lot. Oh, good. Yay. I'm glad. I'm so glad. This is so sweet. Thank you. I revised that my SP proposed to me and I recorded my journal entry and listened to it all night. How do I proceed in the 3D? Do I tell myself I am engaged? My end is marriage. I do script that I am married already. So, okay, so you revised that there was a proposal, you recorded that. So you're imagining marriage, you are married. So how do you proceed in the 3D? Continue to go to that imaginal act, right? Um, yeah, continuing to go to that place in your imagination where you're married, it's already done. So what would that be looking like, feeling like? How would you act and think in all of these in imagination, right? It's not that we have to like literally take on that role in the 3D. I mean, if you wanted to, you could, but it's continuing to go there in imagination until it becomes to feel more and more natural. Like this state of consciousness feels like home to me, right? So yeah, I would keep going back there through the day to day, right? We're not just doing a technique like once at night and then the rest of the day we're stuck in the 3D and what we don't want. We are continuing to imagine. We are continuing to go there. How can I stop fearing ego backlash? I know I'll be with my SB again, and it is done, but how can I stop fearing bad news on the way? I get nervous just hearing people mention my SB. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I know that one's tricky. I know it's really because again, we're very, very attached to the 3D circumstances and the fear that if something bad happens in the 3D, like, oh God, it's gonna be detrimental, it's gonna destroy us, it's gonna be terrible. Which is why really the biggest thing that we want to do and continue to strengthen is our conviction of ourself as the operant power. See yourself as separate from the circumstances and the states of consciousness because that's all anything is in the 3D. They're all just states. They're all just experiences. Like we've got this, smorgasbord of states and things that we can pick and choose and select. And if we accidentally select a state that is crap and not ideal, okay, we'll pick a new one. You can't lose. You guys, you can't lose. Like even if The worst case scenario happened tomorrow, you can change it. You can always change it. And getting to the place where we have that conviction in ourselves as the operant power, and that we are separate from the states that we occupy, we are not the states of consciousness we occupy, you're taking your power back that we're accidentally giving to the states themselves. I hope that makes sense. Um, and all like ego backlash, yes, like yeah, it sucks. It sucks when things happen in the 3D, when we react in a certain ways, but if we continue to go to the end, and if we continue to strengthen our resolve as the operant power, the ego backlash is gonna weaken and weaken until it is no longer a thing that happens, right? So, yeah. I didn't see it. Did I miss a super chat? Oh! Oh, I'm so sorry, Sparkhead. I did not even see like, usually a super chat appears up at the top, but it never came through. I just saw yours in the chat right now. I'm so sorry. Um, please look it up on camera. Uh, look up, um it was a fantasy that became real. Oh, is this about somebody imagined a character that came to light, that came to reality? Oh, somebody created a character and then met her in real life? That's cool. That's really cool. I'll have to check that out. I'll definitely have to check that out. No, and I do apologize. I did not even get a notification up here because that's how I typically know that a super chat came in, but I didn't see anything go off. I'm sorry about that. Mm. I love your overnight meditation, just starting using it this week. I really believe changing my core self-beliefs is the key to manifesting. Yup, 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 yup. Thank you for creating the overnight meditation. You are so welcome. You are so welcome, and you're absolutely right. Yeah. Changing the conception of self is key. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. How come this is about conscious manifesting and at the same time about detachment? For example, not having resistance. Little bit confused at the question. How well, because we're consciously selecting a new state, right? B We've been manifesting this entire time. Like, we're always manifesting 24/7. All we all day, every day, we have been, right? We've just been doing it unconsciously, unaware that, when in selecting these states, we were not conscious that we were doing so. Now we're becoming conscious that we're doing so. But when it comes to detachment, when we talk about detachment, that means separation from that old state of consciousness, right? Separation from the old story and all of the fears, doubts, limitations that came with it. Um, so you're consciously and deliberately moving into a state that is opposite of perhaps what you have been experiencing and no longer want, right? But in order to maintain that new state of consciousness, we ultimately want to get to a place where we are detached and no longer identifying and resonating with that old story. So I hope that makes sense. But they do absolutely go hand in hand. I was wondering whether you were constantly thinking of your SP manifestations, say, months before him showing up for good, or if you forgot about the whole thing before he came back. A little bit confused with the question. Was I constantly thinking of him? No, no. Right before he showed up? No, I can't say I was constant. I mean, he would pop up in my mind once in a while. Um, but no, it wasn't. It certainly wasn't the state of, oh God, I want him, I miss him, I need to get him back. It wasn't. It was no longer that state, for sure. But I didn't just forget about him entirely either. No. I hope that was the answer to your question. If I missed something, let me know. I was shocked, I almost fell on the floor when I saw it in my car. Your advice works. That's amazing, love bug. That is so cool. Is there a way to revise a whole relationship because the issues were daily, or do you have to pick and revise only memories you remember? You can completely rewrite the whole you can rewrite the whole relationship. Yeah. Revision is the cool thing about revision is it's not just selecting the different memories, like just changing the memories. You can write a whole new story. You can write all new memories. Um, you're essentially rewriting the past, exactly how we would do for like a screenplay, right? And say there were, scenes and locations and dialogues that we wanted to change. We would just take that draft out and write a whole new one. Yeah, same thing. I find when I do sats, I feel like it takes hours for me to go to sleep. Yeah, that so if you're struggling to fall asleep with sats, if it's keeping you awake, it's likely that you're jumping into the imaginal scene too soon. We really want to practice getting ourselves deeply relaxed first, which on the other end of the spectrum, a lot of people struggle with falling asleep too fast, which can happen. And why I personally recommend if you're new at sats, if you're just getting started, practice during the daytime because by the end of the day we're going to be exhausted, and it's easy to just fall straight through into sleep. But practice in the daytime, keep yourself sitting upright, and practice just first getting yourself as deeply relaxed. Like we tend to just take a couple seconds relaxing and then jump into our scene when we're still way too conscious and alert, and that's absolutely going to keep you awake because there's conscious effort going into that, and this is effortless. Yeah, so try practicing just getting yourself relaxed, and if it's too easy to fall asleep, then I would practice it in the afternoon instead. Hi, Missy. My question is: are we ever denied a desired manifestation, i.e., a career opportunity? Is there any truth to the rejection is God's protection? How can I reconcile these statements? Yeah, no, no. So if we're denied a manifestation, is it because God is protecting us? No, no. Um, as far as awareness, as the I am, um, completely objective. Like we as the human self have free will. We have God's never going to jump in and say, "Oh, you can't do that. Can't do that. No, can't have that." No, no. Yeah. If we have a desire that is denied by something, that it's we were in a state or we have a belief or there's something there that we were doing likely unconsciously, but yeah. What made it click for you that you're the operant power of your reality? I understand that I'm responsible for everything in my life, but I just can't make it sink deeper. Good question. Um, what made it click? I don't know if there was like a specific moment where like aha, I am the operant power. It just came to me after. I mean, first off, you can only observe so many things happening the way that you've imagined so many times before you're like, that's not a coincidence. Like I'm doing that. I'm clearly doing that. So that's one, and two, the more that I practice meditation and sats and going deeper within myself, and exploring that awareness and untethering from all of the conceptions of my ego self and Miss Renee, the experiences that you have are undeniable. It's undeniable. Yeah. Yeah, but it's not something that we can force ourselves to believe either, right? I can't I could sit here and try to tell myself over and over like, "Yes, you are the operant power," but we need to experience it. We need to experience, and with that comes, I guess, the proof along the way that what we imagine does in fact become our reality. It's the 3D reality, I guess. When we revise and nothing changes, what might be the problem there? Thanks. Absolutely, John. Um, so if we revise something and nothing happens, well, we probably want to go back and revise again, because it could be that that old story is still very much alive within us. And that old memory is still very much alive within us. Which is, if that's the case, we just want to continue to go back and rewrite that memory and revise that memory. You'll know that you have successfully revised because the reactions and things that you note will be from that new memory. It'll be that new memory that comes up for you naturally. Like when you think about the event that happened, it will be the new one, not the old one. And you'll start to feel and react and think more from that old memory instead of, or that new memory, I'm sorry. The new memory instead of the old one. So again, we like the gauge is always going to be internal, right? The gauge is always internal. Like, are we still keeping that old memory alive within us? Have we actually come to accept that new reality? Has that been fully impressed and changed and accepted? Things like that. Yeah. All right. Got time for maybe one question? Question: when you're doing everything right, but nothing shows up, what do we do? I keep hope and stay the course, but sometimes I get frustrated but keep going. Any help? Absolutely. So when we say doing everything right, like what does that mean? The techniques? Like you're doing the techniques every day, um, keeping a close eye on your mental diet. I'm assuming that's what you mean by doing everything right. Um, well, the most important question is what state are you occupying more often than not? What are the beliefs and assumptions that come up for you? What are the reactions that you're having in your day to day? Like, are you still living from that old state or are you now moved into this new one? And the way that we gauge that is how we're acting, thinking, feeling internally. Because if we're still thinking from that old state, then we haven't changed. And if we haven't changed on the inside, nothing's gonna change on the outside. That's the outside's a mirror. It's only gonna the reflection's only gonna change when we change internally. So I would start to pay very close attention to what thoughts, reactions, moods, feelings come up for you in your day to day. And just observe, like, don't judge it, don't panic, don't we don't need to do anything like that. We're just keenly aware of how we're thinking and feeling and reacting. Is that's gonna tell you everything you need to know. Um, can Thank you for the super chat, Mercedes. And oh my god, Marigold, I'm so sorry. I don't know why it is not showing up here. I'm so sorry if I missed your super chat. Let me know. Let me know what your question was. Can you tell how you ended your double-mindedness? Absolutely. Y in general or about SP or I assume you mean in general, right? Um, the double-mindedness calmed down when once the beliefs were changed, right? It's twofold. One is faith in the law, faith in yourself as the operant power. You're not going to be susceptible to the ego and the fears and limitations of the ego anymore. You might still notice an intrusive thought come in once in a while, but you're not going to have any kind of reaction to it because you don't identify with it, right? So it's continuing to build your trust and faith in your law and yourself as the operant power. And then when you move into that new state, you're gonna the lack of double-mindedness is what comes with that. You're no longer gonna be battling thoughts from that old state of consciousness because your thoughts come from the state, right? Whatever state that you generally occupy, that's going to determine what thoughts come up for you. So when in a new state of consciousness, your thoughts are going to line up with what you ultimately desire. So it ceases to be double-mindedness. I hope that helps. I hope that helps. And on that note, Marigold, I'm so sorry. I'm trying to find where your question was. I don't see it. Oh, there we go. How does one get over the fear of rejection while manifesting a new partner? If a guy I like message me shows interest, I fear it won't work out. Thank you. You're amazing. Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry I missed that the first time around. I don't know what happened there. How do we get over the fear of rejection when manifesting a new partner? First, understand that that fear of rejection is all based on old beliefs. It's all old story. It's not true, it's not real, it's not who you really are, right? Like, we are none of the things that we fear. That's all very ego dominated, right? Um, and we get over the fear of rejection by, well, continuing to imagine yourself as the person you wanna be. So, I mean, if you are in a if you are thinking about the state, if you are imagining the state where you are now in a long-term loving committed relationship, that would imply automatically that you feel comfortable, you feel confident in this person, you feel safe, you feel secure, right? Um, that's the only kinds of beliefs that are compatible with that state of consciousness, a long-term healthy committed relationship. So continuing to go to those states and imagination and getting more and more familiar with what that feels like and what that would be like if you were now the person that had this long-term loving committed relationship, like, that in and of itself implies that you no longer harbor that fear, you no longer resonate or identify with that fear. And this is the entire point. This is how we change our beliefs. This is how we change these old fears and assumptions and doubts, is continuing to go to that place in imagination. And so we can start to identify more with the version of us that is confident, that is secure, that feels at peace within herself. I hope that makes sense. And you can gauge if it's working by noting the reactions that you're having. So if you're still noticing reactions from fear that, oh, they're not gonna be interested in me, that's just a cue that's just telling you, "Hey, there's still this part of me that is identifying with this old story." And knowing that information, you can then say, "Okay, well, I need to go back and continue to resonate more and more and marinate myself more and more with the state that's as I'm desired, I'm loved, I'm secure, I'm feeling everything that I want to be." So, continuing to go there until that just becomes who you are, right? You're identifying with that state, and that's becomes your conception of self versus all of the old junk and fear and crap that no longer serves you. All right, you guys, on that note, I do have to get going, but it has been absolutely lovely. Thank you so much for joining me today. I tried to get to as many as you as I could. But thank you so much for being here. Much love to all of you. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And I look forward to talking to you all again next week. Bye, guys. Mwah.